Hello everyone and welcome to this week's Q&A. I'm your host Mod.Isa and joining us today is Mod Bruno.
Hey.
We have Mod Kirby.
Hello there.
And Kirby's very loud. That's nice, just deafened me. Thank you for that, Kirby. And also Mod Kieran. Hello, Mod Kieran.
Hello.
How's everyone doing? Let's start with you, Kirby, and see if you've quietened down a little bit. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. I just felt really aggressive. I would like to apologise for my loudness. Sorry to all the Twitch users whose ears I was blown out, apparently. I'm doing fine. I'm finally actually working in the office, and it is so much nicer than working from home. Like, I get why people enjoy working from home, but just the amount of actual face-to-face interaction I've actually been able to have discussing work stuff and not work stuff has been fantastic.
You've met us all. Well, not all of us, but you've met a bunch of us now for the first time. It's pretty amazing.
And I
This is
also
the
just get to
first week you've been in, right, Kirby?
Yeah.
Sorry, we overlapped.
Bit. I also get access to an amazing array of stupid weaponry like SGS. It's great. I get to PK people in real life. I should probably not say that, and I'm gonna get in trouble.
Yeah, maybe don't do that in real life. Only in game. That's what the wilderness is for, or PvP worlds, if that's your thing instead. Good job, Kirby. Come onto the stream, hyper aggressive, very loud, and now wants to PK. Let's move on. Mod Kieran, how have you been today?
Hey. I'm good. I'm just enjoying the background game going on stream right now. You got green screen boy in the top left corner with a good view of old school. Got a good sword in the office with Kirby, but just got to compliment Bruno. It's like that aesthetic glow behind him in the lighting. Yeah. That is sublime. Expertly done.
The blank canvas. I reckon, Bruno, it looks perfect for you to just do some doodles on the wall at some point. You're going to have to do some drawings. Maybe not actually if you'll lose your deposit on your place if it's a rental.
Maybe before I move out, Yeah.
Maybe. Well, how have you been, Bruno? What have you been up to?
Yeah, be very good. Be working on something where I saw someone complain about today, which is the reduction of combat achievement kill counts tasks. So that'll be coming out soon. We aren't releasing them now because obviously the league's still ongoing and we don't want to give people free points by completing tasks. So wait out for those soon.
Awesome. We saw some pretty exciting things today, actually, during our sprint review. It's a chance where we get to see everything that the team have been working on. Obviously, there's so many different teams now that work on individual projects. Some pretty exciting stuff coming your way very soon. That's all I'll say. Ha! Don't you love an announcement of basically nothing? Our speciality. Now, in terms of actual announcements that have some information, first of all, ! Game update. We do have the player and NPC PJ timer, which arrived with this week's game update, along with some improvements to loot keys and new broadcast settings for clans and group Ironmen. You can find all of the info and the changes with that command ! Game update. Just to quickly touch on the player and NPC PJ timer as well. Today we actually discussed some of the feedback that we saw from yesterday's game update. There are a few small changes that will probably be coming out over the course of the next couple of weeks. And there was a few changes that we actually hotfixed as well today. Not really anything that we felt needed to be commed out, but if you were experiencing issues, especially with NPCs having PJ timers, hopefully you'll notice a difference there especially. Second announcement of the day is ! Poll. Now there is a poll coming very soon where you have your say on the rewards from Tombs of Amaska, which includes a rework to the Pharaoh Scepter. We'll share more news on that on our socials, as well as an in-game broadcast once it's live. We expect that to be in the next few days. And then lastly, ! AOB. Our new Android client open beta is now live. Get signed up and try out all of the new features on mobile, including agility helpers, XP trackers, and much more. We do have a link to the known issues, as well as a survey that would really appreciate if you could fill out and let us know your feedback for any changes that we might need to make before that comes out of open beta into a full launch. I think we can then move on to some user-generated content that we've got together. So if you don't mind, let's go into here. So we have a fantastic painted Slayer cape from Reddit user Where Are You Thornton?
Cool.
It is really cool. The title of this Reddit thread isn't very positive though. It says, so long story short, my first love and I broke up. I think I saw this post, and the detail goes into that they got back together, and this was part of their getting back together gift, I believe. Could be incorrect, so apologies, but nonetheless, it's a really cool painting anyway. Really love it. The next one coming in from Reddit user Rancher Squeaks is a Lego version of the Wise Old Man.
Well, that's cool.
Very cool. A little scenario set up and everything. Another little rat in there. Very, very cool.
That's
I think
great.
I've seen there's a few of these that have been put together now, as well as custom ones that can be put together. So definitely, if you like that kind of thing, check out Rancher Squeaks. We have from Reddit user Knit Lifts a crocheted purple party hat. Very cool indeed. A step up from what you would get from a cracker, at least. All right, and then from Mins2, this is titled 99 range on my UIM.
Nice.
Very cool.
That's not Ultimate Iron Man, that's a parrot.
That's definitely an ultimate iron parrot of sorts.
Kind of reminds me
Really
of
cool
the Void
picture there.
Ranger helm.
Oh yeah, actually, that's a pretty good point. It's like Void Ranger UIM, maybe that's just their go-to setup that they're always wearing out and about. Congratulations on 99 range anyway, Mins2. And then lastly, we have from T Gamlock a 3D printed Slayer helm. That is awesome.
Hell yeah. Hard to gauge
Hell
the
yeah.
scale. Like, how big is it? You need a banana for scale, because I can't tell.
I was just about to say the same.
Like, is
What year
that
is
that human size? Is that just a small thing on the sofa? Like, either way.
Yeah, I'd say
pretty cool.
it looks like it's on the sofa, and I'd imagine it's probably the size to fit a cat, maybe. It looks like a cat's head could fit in there, Kieran. Maybe you could
Cat
ask them
size,
to...
Yeah.
yeah. Or a parrot. Sure, why not?
You know, I know we just showed the party hat. We've moved on from the party hat, but like I realized not that too long ago that Americans don't have Christmas crackers, and I've heard from many people, and obviously not just Americans, but most of the rest of the world other than the UK, don't know that party hats and crackers are like a real Christmas thing, and they thought it was made up in RuneScape, and it's not something. They didn't realize it was something we actually do at Christmas.
Well, to be honest, like if you actually think about it, why do we even do it?
I mean, I don't know, but I don't know the history of it, right? But
I don't know the history
people
either,
in the
but I
chat
tell you what.
who don't know this.
I am miffed when it comes around to Christmas and we don't have what's it called? Christmas crackers. It's the worst part. You can't have Christmas dinner without a Christmas cracker, even though I don't know why we have them.
Yeah,
all right, well let's move on from
competitive.
moving on from party hats and Christmas crackers and Slayer helms. Let's go into some questions that we have together from the players. It looks like a pretty wide range today, so it should be a variety of topics for us to cover. First of those topics comes from Some Spirit, who asks, what's the situation with the rest of the Kourend City reworks? Is it likely that we'll see the next one come out this year?
I don't think it'll be something we get time to look at this year. Obviously, Zaire as an entirety, not just Kourend, isn't finished. This is still an area we're going to be adding new content to. There's a storyline that's really just sort of heated up, for lack of a better term, with a kingdom divided. So there's more to do. There's a whole lot more improvements we could do with Kourend that are not related to just the layout of the map as well. It takes a long time to get around. There's a lack of accessibility, even with the quest reward and stuff. That's still a bit of a problem. So there's stuff to do, but probably not any time in the immediate future.
And of course, there's already the Kingdom of Valamar to come, so we're definitely not done there. It's just one of those things that we'll get around to sometime.
All right, perfect. Thank you both. Next question from Red Tree Rock, and they ask, what do you think about the ability for players to speak to ghosts without using items at level 90 or 99 prayer? this could be added as part of Mauritania Elite Diaries. Not really sure why it's 90 or 99, but...
This doesn't sound like a diary reward, this sounds like a quest reward. What I'm hearing is we need another ghost quest.
Yeah. I think it already is a diary reward, isn't it? Maybe?
It's attached to the pants. So like the Mauritania legs, you use those, and that can act as a ghost speak, I think. I don't think Maury legs 4 like unlocks it completely.
Well, I just love RuneScape things. Like, okay, you either wear an amulet or you put on this pair of trousers, and suddenly you can speak to ghosts. Okay.
Like, I get it. It's a small quality of life thing, but I think it's probably a quest reward more than it is just directly on the diary.
I agree with that, and it sounds good to me. Okay. Oh, I did forget to say, by the way, if you have any questions for us in chat at OldSchoolRS with your question, if we get through all of the ones that we have from the suggestion threads, we'll get to the questions from chat as well. Moving on, Mr. G says they have a question for you, actually, Bruno. And they ask if the team has had any further discussion about allocating resources to making new early/mid-game bosses and bosses that require the use of mage, potentially reusing and adapting existing boss fights.
That's not something I've worked on specifically. I know we'd eventually also like to work on something like the expansion of the giant bosses. So we've got the moss giant boss and the hill giant boss. So I know there's been talks of like a fire giant boss or something like that. Maybe that would be cool to use, like a water spells, something like that. But yeah, not much as far as I know.
I think there's a big gaping gap for something that could be added here, though. It's clearly a missing part in the game. I spoke a little bit about this in the past. Obviously, the giants are a prime sort of direction you could go with, but in general, there's not many mid-game bosses. And to be fair, we've got Seracnus, right, as like slightly earlier game than some of the other stuff we've got. But the problem with it is still that the stuff's tradable. It gets farmed by high-level players, and we saw a lot of that feedback when we released it. What I think there's room for is like mid-game upwards sort of untradeable gear that people have to earn by fighting these bosses, which lets us tailor them and aim them at the middle game. I think if you think about your journey as a player from the start to later game, there's a huge gulf from that point when you get like your Dragon Sim and your rune set, or maybe your D-Med, or that kind of gear. The next upgrades are so far away, right, in terms of your progression, either the money you've got to get, or even worse on an Iron Man in terms of earning them. So I'd love to add some middle game untradeable gear that's attached to these kind of bosses. That means we can have it at reasonable drop rates, and it's something to earn. We don't have too much in this game, so it's a topic in of itself, right? Untradeable equipment, but most untradeable equipment doesn't come from encounters; it comes from minigames.
Yeah, or quests, right?
Yeah,
I really like that though. I've always been a fan of the idea of having like a mid-tier raid that can be a nice introduction into later game PVM, especially, and to help bridge that gap, as you've mentioned, with gear as well. But I think it would be pretty welcome, because there just isn't anything that you can do with your friends at that lower level. I know we've now got the story mode version of Fear of Blood, and I imagine with Tombs of Amaska it will be more accessible. And even though Chambers is massable, it's not really the kind of place that you would just go and take mid-levels in for the first time, because it's going to be really hard for them to figure out what they need to do and actually be able to complete the content at the same time. So yeah, I'd be well up for seeing something like that. I think you've just
a boss that works well. You have to work it out now. But yeah, a boss that can work quite well, or a raid, a boss, some sort of encounter that worked well with that kind of like D-Sim gear, Ivan staff, or your magic short bows, like that kind of tier, and work well with that, be targeted specifically at that. The problem if you give them tradable loot, especially with a pet, is at a high level people just go and farm it, it'll crash the price of that tradable loot, or it has to be so rare, which means it doesn't work very well for a mid-game player.
Cool, I like that. All right, well, maybe at some point in the future we'll see some form of design that we can talk about more. Until then, we have a question for you, Kieran, from Pitiful Cod 4394. And they say, in addition to League and League rewards, can music unlocked in a league stay permanently unlocked / carry over to subsequent leagues?
I see no reason why we couldn't include that. That's not a promise that we can change that for next league. I think everything doesn't get sort of wiped until the next league actually releases, though. So, like, when you log into the next league for the first time, that's the point where we do the reset. So, I think we should be able to. I almost regret that we didn't do that last time. It might be because we maybe added... I don't know if there's ever been any tasks about unlocking music. I don't think so. So, I think it's probably fair game.
It could make for an interesting kind of like strategy shift where you have the music cape unlocked for the next league and you've got that teleport now to Phalo the Bard. If you want to use that, for example, to get around, could be a cool little touch.
Clues. There are clues that use them. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Something to think about, though. It seems reasonable.
Cool. All right. Next question comes from Fire Horzard. And they say, could we ever see an update on skill cape utility? I'm specifically thinking of agility cape perks, but I'm sure there are other capes that are near useless too.
I see this topic come up quite a lot.
We did them.
Yeah. And I do agree that it would be nice for every skill cape to be useful and have like a good use. But at the same time, it also buffs the max cape quite a lot, because obviously the max cape has all the skill buffs. So if we were to make every skill cape very good, maybe we might also consider kind of nerfing the max cape a little bit. With the signs we've seen before, like making you choose between a set amount of skill cape buffs. So instead of having 23 skill cape buffs, you have like maybe 5. Which, to be fair, for a lot of players would be enough because they don't tend to use more than like 2 or 3. Yeah.
It depends how powerful you go, right? Like, it would have to be to warrant probably making that change. I think you'd have to be making considerable buffs to the perks. I think there's room on some of the perks that are just essentially useless that we can maybe make small tweaks, but they were always intended to be little benefits, right? Little. Just the word perk, right? It's a small perk. Maybe it's just warrants us doing a quick look over them all and thinking if we got any better ideas nowadays.
Some of them just end up being a bit bigger perks than the other ones because the crafting cape, POH cape, construction cape.
There is a note here, Kieran, that you're gonna. Oh, sorry, Kirby.
No, you go. It's fine.
I thought you were done. I thought you were done. So I was gonna.
So, obviously, sort of related to skill capes and max capes and so on. Something we've seen come up obviously time and time again, and there's mixed opinions on it, is the topic of the completionist cape. What is it? How do we do it? What are the rules around getting it if we do? A lot of max players burn out and want something else to go for. Equally, some people don't want it. Everyone's got a preconception of what it is as well, because obviously it exists in RuneScape. So it's something I'm all right. Like I'm fairly keen to at least have the conversation, because I would love to have something that can actually be there for max players to go and achieve and represent the achievements that they've got beyond just merely maxing. So I just kind of wanted to present some of my opinion on kind of like how I think the comp cape could be done. This is reflective of just myself, not necessarily the whole old school team, but the idea that you essentially have a huge you obviously have a laundry list, right, of requirements from, get all the skills to max, get all your quests done, do this, this, and this, and this. I like the idea that all of those requirements essentially have points associated with them, right? So you can weight the tasks and make some more important than others, represented based on like how hard they are to do, and so on. And then the way you structure it is that you unlock the completionist cape at, say, 85% of all of the tasks points, rather than
it was 80% at the start of the call.
Like Yeah, I mean, the numbers 80, 85, 90, like, pick a number. The point is that it's not 100. And the reason why I say that, because obviously the definition of the word completion is like you've completed everything. It's very much in the direction of completion, which is why I think it's still appropriate. But the reason why I'd want to do that is because there's a big problem with completion content. If it's everything, that means you've got to get all of the pets. You've got to do several thousand Theatre of Bloods and Chambers of Xeric, anywhere we would do sort of engagement capes and stuff like that. You get to a point where very quickly you're going to have 2 people with the cape, or even 0. What about the collection log? The collection log's a great shout. No one realistically is going to complete all of the clue scroll items on the collection log and get all the pets and get all these other things. But if you try to write a rule that says extreme stuff isn't required, that's a very hard rule to define. And we've got the benefit of hindsight. RuneScape had some issues with this, right? Lots of people argued and debated what should be a requirement and what shouldn't be a requirement. I don't want any debate. If it's completable, it has task points associated with it. We avoid you having to do absolutely every single element by lowering the requirement to like 85 or 90%. The cape itself, I would say, is purely a cosmetic upgrade to the max cape and the variants. So obviously you could have like a fire comp cape, you could have an infernal comp cape, you could have the skill perks cape as well. So it wouldn't be anything other than a cosmetic, like, ooh, look at you. You've really pulled your finger out and you've got a stellar cape to show off. It wouldn't be like it's the best in slot cape, because I don't want it to be that. And I think that would be the wrong thing to do and put a lot of pressure on completing all these things. Either way, that's my opinion on it. I just wanted to put that out there and get a gauge of what people thought.
It's always interesting seeing discussions that come out from bringing the topic of the comp cape up. There's always a crowd that are well in favor for it, but then there's also the other side of the pond that realize just how much is involved in that. And even you touched on a few points yourself there, Kieran, like the case of pets or thousands of kill counts for specific, PVM instances like Fear of Blood and Chambers of Xeric. And then it's the consideration of future content too. Everything that gets added into the game that's subject to a poll, would people be then more inclined to vote no to content because they don't want to have to complete it to be able to reobtain their comp cape? It's not so much of a problem if the comp cape was considered cosmetic, but if it was to have extra, features or enhancements, then definitely more of a problem. And then to add to that is, I think we all know that inevitably, if the comp cape was to be added as a cosmetic only, it would only be a matter of time until the requests for additions to that to start coming in, and then those additions to continue coming in before it's a point where we're answering the same question every single week on the Q&A. And how do we prevent that from being a case with hindsight in mind, but players also wanting it at the same time? It's a difficult one, and those are part of the reasons why I personally have always felt against the comp cape in particular. But with the premise of it being cosmetic only, I wouldn't really have an argument in that case then, because it wouldn't matter if you didn't have it. It wouldn't impact your gameplay. It's just more just about your fashion, right?
Yeah, to be honest, more of the stuff we see with the max cape is add more variants. Essentially add more cosmetic variants for like the champions cape and stuff. The comp cape would probably be in the same place, and that's almost what I'm trying to combat by saying 80-85%, whatever threshold we choose for unlocking it, is to get away from the kind of, oh god, I'm going to need to complete this content to keep my cape. Right? You can make a personal choice to say, actually, I can't grind out third age, that's too much, I'm going to leave that task. But if you do, there's probably some decent points available for you. Either way.
I do feel that the threshold way of doing it would probably be the lesser of two evils, because people do tend to really dislike having to be fast to do a certain piece of content if they don't really want to. So if they can ignore that piece of content, do something else they might want to, then that's not as bad.
Here's
So
what
yeah, it's always going to be a bit contentious when it's not really a completion escape because you didn't complete everything.
What you do is, you have the 80%, 85% pick a number for your completion cape. You then have the completion cape trimmed. 100%.
Wow.
No exceptions. And then someone's going to get
the
that.
Sort of thing, I think genuinely 0 people would have it right now, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But it's there. Just to say, if you somehow manage to get all of the RNG in the known universe to complete Third Age and all of the rest of the pet log and everything else, have a trimmed cape. Just have it.
Fair. All right, well, I think that's enough comp cape talk for now. We can move on to the next question, which comes in from Mr. Mammal. And they have said, what are your thoughts on if you receive a piece of Third Age during leagues, at the start of the next league, you get a Third Age ornament kit, which allows you to cosmetically change a piece of gear?
Cosmetically how?
That's very vague.
I'm not giving you a piece of Third Age at the start of the league, I'm sorry.
What if you could change it to look like a piece of Third Age, but it's still normal item? I think that's probably most realistic in terms of what they're suggesting. Good on Mr. Mammal.
Could we just give them the Third Age ring and they can be whatever they want, but just as a metamorph type? I'm not a huge fan of this, to be honest.
No.
I don't
I
want
assume
to
it will be
spend
very
dev time
difficult.
on arbitrary things being like sort of held over for these leagues, right? I'd rather spend the time on making an interesting league that's rather than allowing you to sort of keep a cosmetic thing for the sake of I got a really rare thing and don't want to lose it.
Petamorph is like they're pretty cool and they don't really impact anyone in any way. Items themselves are a bit more like a contentious thing to do, because then it's like, well, if this guy's got like a Third Age sword, well, that's pretty cool, and it might actually work with a Third Age sword, which gives him a good advantage when he gets to that point. You won't have to complete Monkey Madness to get your Dragon Skin attack, because you can just use a sword. But yeah, maybe something else we can look at when it comes to rewards.
Okay, all right. Well, you heard it there, Mr. Mammal. It sounds like a unanimous no, unfortunately. Coming in from Venomous RS, they say, now that you're adding a PJ timer this week, many think you're going to kill off team PKing. Are you planning on giving a multi-hotspot for teams to PK at? Good question. I don't mind taking the start of it.
Yeah, go for it.
Want me to? Sure. Kieran, you may want to jump in at some point. I'm not sure if you have ideas in your mind, but obviously the introduction of a PJ timer does essentially eliminate what used to be singles team PKing. In terms of new hotspots, we do have the Wilderness Boss rework coming up. We still haven't entirely decided exactly on how that will work just yet, whether the bosses themselves will be located in multi or getting to them will require multi, for example. We still need to go through the design of that, which will start after the PvP arena is finished, because that's currently what the Cursed team are looking at. But in terms of like, is there an update that we have ready for the roadmap that is specifically targeted just at multi-activity? No. But the introduction, as I say, of the Wilderness Boss rework could potentially bring in those. And I would be really hopeful to think that now that we have a team dedicated to PvP, we could look at bringing in new hotspots for multi. But I also thought that, you know, maybe there's potential for us to actually expand on the way that combat systems work. Now that, at the moment anyway, at least, because obviously everything is subject to change. We might not stick with this forever. It's just a kind of test at the moment to see how the PJ timer is impacting the wilderness and whether it is beneficial. Let's say that it sticks. Well, the next content that we bring to the wilderness could potentially be very specifically set as 2v2 combat area. So it's like a two-way multi-combat where two players can attack two of the players at the same time, or maybe it's three-way multi-combat, or obviously just standard multi-combat where it's unlimited. So I think we have a lot of options that are available to us going forward. It's just a case of actually sitting down, designing them, and bringing those designs to you. One of the things that I've said myself all along is that we do want to bring out new content to the wilderness, especially stuff that introduces a little bit more of that high risk, high reward. But there's just been a lot of underlying fundamental issues that many players have had issues with for a very long time. So we wanted to try and fix those first so that we had good foundations then to work off going forward. So I think we're getting close to that point now. Obviously, it's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect because there's always going to be one crowd of people that are unhappy with something while another crowd of them are happy with it. But I think hopefully the work that we've done this year, especially, just goes to show that we are trying. And at the same time, we're not really too afraid of just going out there and making changes and just seeing what happens, because at the end of the day, like, we have to do changes to bring in change as well. So yeah, that's me basically in a nutshell. I'd really like to see, as I say, maybe 2-way combat, maybe 3-way combat. Maybe the wieldy bosses that come out will incorporate some form of multi. Yeah, outside of that, it's more of just long-term design that we need to bring to you.
You said you started.
You covered it, man.
Like every single beat.
Oh. Well, I've been thinking about it a lot over the last couple of days, right? There's been a lot of feedback thrown my way, and and seeing a lot of different things. So I've had a lot of things to, I guess. Oh, I got logged out of my account. That's how long I was answering that question for. Cool. All right, well,
it's the game now, man.
Yeah, I can move on to the next question if we're good and no one else wants to cover that part.
Yeah, everything I wanted to say. So.
Okay, cool. So, Engineered Muffin has said, I heard rumours about making all pets run to keep up with players, like the Nextling. Is this true, and is there an expected release date?
Are there rumours? Are there any rumours that have started here? Because I don't know.
I think the players know something I don't, which wouldn't be the first time, actually, to be fair.
Yeah, I don't think there's rumours, but if one pet can do it, then all pets can do it. It's just a case of do we want to. We felt it made sense, and it was a cool little thing for Nex, since Nex does do it, the boss itself. Maybe the Nightmare can do it, since she yeets about as well.
Okay, so
I personally wouldn't mind it.
Most of the NPCs aren't designed to move at that speed. They are going to look very silly going at run speed.
They don't have running animations.
Work. Yeah.
That's where there's a cost. You could make them walk at 2x speed, but it'll the steps they take. The Grotto pet, how loud it is, and it stomps around like what? Stop, and it's running across the room at like 2 tiles a tick. Like it just. You would need the animations, and that means it's a little bit more expensive, sadly.
Yeah, could end up doing double the sound effects whilst it's walking about. That'll hurt everyone's ears.
Please no.
What is this debate between tick and cycle? I saw it come up because we used the word cycle in a blog.
Yeah, we reference cycles in blogs, but we also call them ticks, and some people are just a little bit upset.
It's because, at the end of the day, the entire player base say tick, right? But I can tell you the amount of times that when I used to write a lot of blogs, at least, where I'd refer to it as a tick, and someone in the development team would say, actually, it's a game cycle. So I'm like, okay, I'll change it to a game cycle, but players are going to turn around and tell me that it's a tick. So we just kind of now say, they're game cycles, also known as ticks, or just 0.6 seconds, whichever you really want to go with. So that's my experience of it, anyway.
Just pick one. As long as you're consistent with yourself, everyone will know what you're talking about. No one really cares.
Cool. Well, I don't think the whole internal code is going to be changed to refer to them as ticks instead of game cycles. So we'll keep saying game cycles. You keep calling us out on it, and we can keep this going for as long as we can. Next question from Phantom Ends. They have said, with talk about reworking some skills, I was wondering what skills are considered on the table and which skills are considered off the table. Also, considering that the only knowledge we have about the rework is additional content, presumably, Oh, there wasn't a pause there, never mind. I.e. the new smithing content that was mentioned in a recent post. What form will these reworks come in?
Well, there are certainly skills that need work more than others. That doesn't mean any of them are off the table, but it does mean certain skills need more attention. And I'm sure a lot of you have opinions on which skill you'd like to see worked on. We've done surveys. We did a big survey not too long ago. We've got the results of that, and that indicated skills that people wanted to see be worked on. I'm sure it's going to be no surprise to know that like rune crafting was at the top, or at least it was very near the top, as we want to see change. We are obviously very close to the sort of launch day for Guardians of the Rift, right? That's something we're working on. In that case, it takes that form. It's a new skilling method to try and give you some variety of how you train the skill, make it more fun, a bit more engaging, a bit more social. And offer something that fits nicely alongside other runecrafting methods. For smithing, obviously we already talked about one. We are working on that smithing rework, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it in the near future. In that case, it's taking the form of a new piece of skilling content, right? Again, similarly, it's an alternative way to train the skill that would be, good at certain levels, better at others, and so on. But not every skill's the same. Some skills might need fixing, like actually making changes to the existing content rather than adding something new. But, there are other skilling updates planned for later in the year that we haven't really spoke about yet, or haven't necessarily fleshed out the designs as much as we'd like before we talk about them as well. But it's something I think we haven't put probably enough investment into. Last year, I think, we did Mahogany Homes, we had Temperos, but skilling hasn't had a ton of content. Doing a little bit more this year to try and address some of the skills that people feel warrant it. But yeah, there's no point of us spending a lot of time reworking, fixing up skills that people kind of already love, right? You might want new content. It kind of have this double vicious cycle thing, right? People talked about this before, right? People love Slayer, so there's a tendency to try and add more Slayer content. But you're just reinforcing an already popular skill. That's good. You still want to feed that, but you also need to look at the skills that people don't like so much and try and fix them up.
Sorry, for some reason someone in the chat really just tickled me then. Slayer good. I heckin' love Slayer.
And this is why we do Slayer updates,
Sorry,
because people like Slayer. Congratulations, you're part of the problem.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for that, Kieran. Appreciate it.
You chose violence.
Hopefully,
today.
the answer there is like good. Yeah, I mean, you're doing well, Kirby. You're doing well. It's fine. It must be the office. It's having an impact on you.
It's the sword man's doing things to me.
All right. Next question from Flamefire Ash, and they have said, given the overwhelmingly positive feedback to backporting select quests, when might we see some more backported quests?
When it feels like it, is the honest answer.
Come on, Ed.
If there's time on the schedule for him to get one and he particularly wants to do one, because I think that is actually how Land of the Goblins came about. Yeah. He's the one most proficient at backporting anyway, so... Here's hoping
we wanted your opinions because it gives us food for thought, right? It lets us think about it now. Obviously, it's still fresh. When it comes to sort of planning out our schedule going forward, it gives us an option, right? If people are really keen on seeing backport quests, that's something we can think about. At the same time, I think there is still a genuine excitement to something new as well. And so we've got to get the balance right. Other things might come about in a shorter time frame, like we are doing a game jam very soon, right, where we're going to spend basically a week doing not usual work, but spending work sort of time on, ideating, creating new little pieces of gameplay, whatever it is. That might be the sort of time where we experiment with new backported quests and stuff like that. So who knows? But it's a very interesting topic, because it does open the doors to some of the more expensive quest lines, like which have follow-up quests in RuneScape that we could say, yeah, we could bring that over.
Yeah, well, we're not saying you're getting Wild Gothic Sleep next year, but it is something we'd like to look at more. as we've done with Land of the Goblins.
Perfect, thank you. Well, yeah, I think as the question answered itself, like overwhelming positive feedback. We know everyone wants it, and that includes ourselves. So hopefully it will happen soon. Venomous RS has asked if we can buff some of the daily achievement diary rewards. For example, the Wilderness Elite Diary lets you claim 50 free runes per day from Lundal. It's so bad, you can get 50 air runes.
Some of those diary rewards are wild, man. I'll go for it. You take the rant.
I feel like over the last 5 years, we've very slowly increased the amount of teleports that you get from different tiers. Like, some of them we haven't hit at all, some of them we've fixed and made better, but there's no consistency in them. And some of the rewards, they're just pointless. They may as well not exist. I complete a diary tier and I'm like, oh, I'm excited. What do I get? Oh, the only thing I care about is the XP lamp. Right? It's just... And it's not just rewards, to be honest. I mean, some of these could just straight up be buffed. The teleport should probably be always unlimited at the elite level, I think. Some of them are unlimited straight away. You know, you get the RD medium cave, you've got the unlimited teleports to the monastery. I don't want to take that away from people either. But they need looking at. Some of them are just really weak. But even the achievement diaries beyond that. Having played my group Ironman recently, you know, it gives you a fresh perspective when you sort of experience all the diaries and stuff again, and you really realize, like, how many diaries require you to plant a palm tree? It's so many. How many diaries have the exact same requirements, right? There's a bunch of diaries that all require 70 prayer. Like, there's a bunch of diaries that all require around 70-ish smithing as well. Like, we've got 23 skills. We could spread this out better, make them more fitting to the content that are in the area, and so on. But that brings in a much bigger conversation around sort of reworking the task lists of diaries, which is complicated because we already have diaries out, some people have got the rewards, and so on. But this kind of brings me on to another point, is that, you know, we released the Lumbridge diary years ago. What, 2015? New content comes out. And it's never represented in the diaries. It probably should be, right? These diaries actually are a really good way for players to find out some of the content that are in those areas. So I quite like the idea of reviewing the diary tasks for all of the diaries. And that might mean even removing some of the tasks, replacing them with something more fitting for those areas. Adding diversity, so you don't have the same task in multiple diaries. That's a bit rubbish. But even on the requirements front, right, try and have some diversity in requirements so that you're not blocked by runecrafting in every single diary, for instance. And also maybe we start the precedent of adding new tasks to the diaries over time, right? Let's say we add Temperos. Temperos should probably be represented in the Desert Diary in some capacity. How do we handle that? That is an interesting topic. Because
time for achievement
no
diaries
one likes
too.
losing the rewards. So how do you tackle it, right? Like, how do you bring in Temperos in a task that it's gonna make the diary complete, but also not frustrate everybody that you're constantly having to come back every month and do another task because the requirements would slowly creep up. It's something to think about. The other thing that we've talked about, like the odd occasion briefly, is like sort of a master level diary. So imagine we do these touch-ups, review a bunch of the tasks, and then you also have a new master tier that's not on one diary, but it's across the whole world. The Master Gillenor diary or something, where we can push some of at the higher end and add a new level of achievement diary tasks. Where maybe it could be a little bit more than just plant a tree. It could be, think combat achievements, but obviously not combat focused necessarily. Where you might have some more like time-based challenges or things like that. I'm not necessarily committed to that kind of approach, but I could see but what I'm sort of imagining is this that can all come together as some more big cohesive achievement diary refresh. So.
I mean, if nothing else, with combat achievements, we have actually set the precedent where we can actually just add tasks. And if we go back through achievement dies regularly, we can actually upgrade the interfaces because the combat achievement ones are so much nicer. So there's definitely scope to do a decent sized project on that, I feel.
Yeah, the interfaces are questionable.
Yes. Our interface work has come on significantly since, what did you say, 2015? And there's the buttons on the player panel. You click on the achievement diary and you get a little scroll. You click on the combat achievements one, you get this massive one where you can go through the world and click on individual bosses, and it just works.
I like to tab for the achievements diary themselves, because especially after the update where it's like a little bit, for every task you do, you get a little bit more on the bar. But yeah, it feels really weird that you open the diary and it's like, here's a quest log looking thing from like 2005. So yeah.
The one thing it does right is you can see the list of tasks. And you can see them very clearly. Here's the list of all of them. But so we need to think about it. But either way.
Cool. Thank you for that. It was, a lot of information there. So Kieran's going to rework the achievement diaries one day. You heard it here first. We have a question from Creepy Werewolf 9609. And they ask, when are the changes from Pulse 76 coming? I'm particularly excited to know when the combat achievement changes from Pulse 76 are being implemented, such as reducing kill count tasks, overall reworking. I think you touched on that earlier, Bruno, something you've been working on yourself. I would like to know if I should hold back on doing them or start grinding if they're not being changed in the near future.
I can take this one since Pulse 76 is something me and Kirby have been working on recently. They'll be coming soon. We've looking at our backlog of stuff that's completed. Quite a lot of stuff's been completed for Pulse 76. It's just a case of where and when do we want to slot these updates in. In the case of the combat achievements kill count reduction, that's something we're waiting for the league to end, and then we might think about doing that. As for all the other stuff like the Briar Feeder changes and small things like buffing V's shield, that'll also come at some point whenever we have space in the schedule, basically.
And I will say specifically for the combat achievements one, you can start grinding now. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but they will retroactively complete.
Yeah, definitely. So. If a task is now complete, kill 5 Scatizos, and you have 9 Scatizos, it's still going to complete, even if right now it will be kill 10 Scatizos, for example.
All right, awesome. Okay, I think what I'm going to do, there's a couple of questions that I want to cherry pick out of the list just because we don't have a huge amount of time. So I'll let you know, Sphere, which ones. But the next one is just the next in the list. This comes in from Really Chewy. And they have said, it takes 20 hours to get a Bando's chest plate and 250 hours to get a Torva plate body. Next and Nightmare provide hugely different gaming experiences to the rest of old school RuneScape. The experience differs enough that it risks alienating those who prefer a less extreme grind/reward. Is this something you consider during the design process? And will we ever see the return of God Wars Dungeon/Slayer Boss unique rates? An example, and gear requirements and difficulty keep prices high instead of extreme rarity.
I feel it is something kind of hard to balance as we go on with the game. Obviously, the older gear like Bandos is still going to be pretty good, and it's not going to be anywhere near as hard to get as Torva. But the Torva does give something for the players at the top end, something to go for. So I personally don't mind it. I think it's kind of a necessary evil that we have. You can't really retroactively balance all the gear, or else we'll just spend all day fixing things that we've kind of updated. But yeah, that's my answer to it.
Yeah, it's certainly a number we should be thinking about when we're designing these things, and I believe it very much was. But you know, we've got to try and position this properly for the game and the economy as well. I mean, how much is a 12 play body right now?
450 mil.
So, you know, we want it to probably sit around there, right? Like, it needs to be price-wise a significant step up from Bandos. Like, we want it to be that price. If this thing was more common, it would just be, you know, it would be fighting for the same place Bandos chestplates sit, and you would just buy it over a Bandos chestplate and make it irrelevant. Obviously, they have the connection with the Bandos components, but that aside, that's specific to this example. So what's the alternative? Bosses whose level and gear requirements and difficulty keeps prices high. Well, we could make Nex a lot harder and make it inaccessible. But I don't really like the idea of releasing Nex and only 100 people can fight it and do it because it's so hard and so challenging. In the case of Nex, obviously it's open to the masses, so it's particularly a little bit more suspect to this. While not all bosses will be, so that's maybe something to think about. If that we open it to a mass of 50, 60 people, yeah, we do probably have to put the rewards at a rarer rate than we might otherwise do. But hopefully less of a problem for raids and such in future.
A part of me is thinking now, like, okay, if we somehow exist in a world where we didn't have God Wars dungeons and we're going to put them into the game now, would we pick the same numbers? We'd probably pick similar ones, but I'm not sure we'd pick the same ones. I don't know what it'd come out as in the end, and would we get the difficulty at the same point where it is 20 for a Bandos chestplate? Who knows?
I think if we were releasing...
well, whatever ended up being like the tier 70 equivalent, you know.
Bandos is in a great position because it's got drops that are so universally desired. It can afford to have a really high supply because the economy actually legitimately meets that demand. And that's, I think, a really key point. And so, obviously, in the case of Torva, right, that's you got your universal demand to a degree as well. But a lot of bosses have to have uniques that are more niche. And so it's very hard because you can't just pump them into the game and make them common because there just isn't enough people that are going to want them all of the time, right? It's not a universal item. Anyway, this is a big topic, and it's certainly something to think about because it's key. It's really important to making a boss successful, whether people are going to enjoy it, whether people are going to feel a satisfaction or just get to a point where they just hate it. There are bosses like, you know, people have talked about gargoyles and called it sort of like the stone prison before. It's like, we don't want to release content that people feel like they don't want to do it, right? So this is an important thing to get right. But the problem is getting that balance of that it's right for Iron Men and it's right for the main game. Many people, particularly people who are probably mostly not Iron Men, want us to sort of dismiss and not design for Iron Men at all. But we know there's a lot of people who are playing Iron Man mode, and we need to get that right too. But yeah, it's a big trade-off because sometimes designing it for the macro economy does mean Iron Men get a bit screwed over by it. Is that something we just accept, or is it something we try and design for? It's a big question. I don't want to just say screw Iron Man because there's a lot of people who do play that mode too.
Yeah, and that's always the difficult part, right, as well, is the catering whilst not catering for. There's a lot of people that are out there that bring up that common point that was raised many year ago now, that, you know, introducing Iron Man would mean that we wouldn't cater to Iron Men. And I think we've debunked that statement many times before by saying that, like, unanimously, I don't think all of us really agreed on that in the first place. And also the fact that if a significant portion of the player base are playing a game mode, we can't just ignore them, right? We have to consider them because it's what's fair. But considering them goes both ways. It's considering them as both, you know, players, but also the fact that they are Iron Men and they chose to go down the Iron Man route and have those self-imposed restrictions. So, as Kira said, it is a difficult balance. And I wonder, just bring this one forward. What if the consideration was that for some bosses that have these much longer grinds that do seem quote unquote unrealistic for an average Iron Man, where the rewards were tied to their character, and if you got them on an Iron Man account, they would be untradeable. You wouldn't be able to drop trade them over to a main. If you de-ironed, you would not have the items as something that would turn into a tradable. And if you were to use them in PvP and die with them, they would break and you would need to repair them at a cost to yourself. so that at least you couldn't just have them as free items out in PvP zones. Could that be something that we might be able to consider as like a middle ground, for example? I'm not saying for next, but I mean as future design consideration.
Yeah, it enters into a place where you're almost catering more, but in a way trying to avoid it being a problem by catering more.
Yeah, I mean, you absolutely are catering more, right? You'd specifically be making it different for being an Iron Man, and you'd have to also think how that would then impact when you're doing other group content with Iron Men and non-Iron Men. Is it easier to get a group of 3 Iron Men on the week of release of content because they'll get the drop sooner to then help boost 2 non-Iron Men, for example?
I mean, obviously, I don't think any of us are the people who work directly on Nex, so I don't want to say anything in sort of place of somebody else, but one of the big factors in designing the reward system for Nex, in the way that sort of people get shared loot in some capacity. A traditional boss would just drop loot to whoever did the most damage, right? You kill Grado in a team, whoever does the most damage gets the drop. Iron Men can't do that, because obviously, if you don't deal 100% of the damage, you don't get the drop. Now, Nex, a boss that's obviously not designed for solos, Iron Men are a bit screwed. It's a team boss. How do Iron Men deal with that? How do you do it? You kind of need a design and reward system that shares it in some capacity in a way that Iron Man can almost benefit from other players. I don't necessarily feel comfortable with either of these situations. Corp gets away with it because of essentially some sort of strat that works around the fact you wouldn't solo it properly, right? You basically have to spec it and tally and bank each run to spec it multiple times. Potentially die and drop your food on the floor. Like, doesn't work either, right? We're kind of just lucky that is a method that is viable. Otherwise, it wouldn't really be Corp would have the same problem. So it's a much bigger conversation around how do you do boss loot in a way that works for the game and doesn't not work for Iron Man.
Yeah, it's definitely not the one that we're going to be able to cover in great quality, at least on a Q&A live stream, but a really, really important topic, and it gets brought up quite a lot, especially since the release of Next, so worthwhile holding on to at least. Right, I've got one last question that I'm going to bring forward, and then we will wrap things up. And I'm bringing this one in particular just because I recall a similar question being asked in the previous Q&A that was in, so maybe we can offer some additional clarity. And this comes from Savagely Sideways 101. They say, you keep mentioning corp damage cap being removed. Is this for spears only, or is it truly all weapons, such as rapier, twisted bow, scythe, etc.?
I assume it would still have the weakness of spears, if that's the thing with Carp, which is Carp is weak to spears. So it still might not be weak to a twisted bow, but if a twisted bow could hit that much, then it would. Although I haven't heard anything about this, so I'm not too sure.
There is information that somebody added to the question as well. The damage cap is applied to everything that can hit Corp, although it's only really relevant to very specific things like the Crystal Halberd. Ruby bolts are still capped at 100 innately, though, as that's the cap on the Ruby bolts, not the monster itself.
Oh, well, hopefully that gave a little bit more clarification then. So, from what I gather from the information is that it will be that the cap is removed in the essence of the current damage cap with other non-spear-like weapons, but any existing damage caps that are, kind of like innately built into the items will exist. Maybe we'll finally get last clarification for the next Q&A that it gets raised upon. But it seems like that's the case, at least. Right, I'm going to wrap things up here. Is there anything else that the mods joining me here would like to say or mention before I go into announcements? Fantastic. All right, exclamation mark game update. The player and NPC PJ timer has arrived with the last the latest game update. It's getting late. Clearly, I'm unable to speak anymore. This is along with loot key improvements and some new broadcast settings for clans and group Ironmen. You can find all of the changes here with the command !game update. If you did miss partway through the stream, look out for the Q&A transcript. We did talk a little bit about the PJ timer and wilderness boss rework and such. But just know that we're continuing to look at your feedback, and we actually made some changes earlier today in the form of a hotfix, mostly around NPCs and their PJ timers. Poll. There is a poll coming very soon where you'll have your say on the rewards from Tombs of a Mascot, including a rework to the Pharaoh's Scepter. Go and check out the most recent blog. And also keep an eye on our socials as well as broadcasts in-game for when that poll goes live. And then lastly, AOB, a new Android client open beta is now live. So get signed up and try out all of the new features on mobile, which include things such as agility helpers, XP trackers, and much more. We have a list of known issues as well as a link to the survey within that command. So if you haven't already, go and fill out the survey, give us your feedback, and let us know what we can improve before we get ready for launching the client officially and bringing it out of beta. That is, or beta, however you prefer to say it. That's everything in terms of announcements. Yeah, so I guess that's it. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it, my Kirby, my Bruno, my Kieran. Thanks for joining.
I'm going to say goodbye to Modsani. In a bit, guys.
Okay, and he's off.
Pray for
Have a
Modsani,
fantastic
guys.
evening, everyone. Modsani is apparently leaving the office, and that was really important. So
he's about to get AGS spec'd at the reception.
Oh dear, that's a good point actually. Kirby's he's out for blood. Thanks to everyone as well that joined me on World 342 at the Blue Moon Inn. You were very incredible. It was fun watching you moving around and dancing. So yeah, have a good evening, everyone. We'll see you next week. Bye.
See yous.